Honorable Chairman, Committee Representatives, I greatly appreciate this opportunity to speak with you today about my concerns, our task force's concerns about the vulnerability of the electric grid.
And what is your task force?
The task force is a task force on national and homeland defense. It's a congressionally sponsored task force. Congressman Trent Franks via the EMP caucus sponsored it.
Thank you.
A few years back. I am currently the deputy to the executive director of this task force. I've had almost 40 years as an NSA employee. I'm retired from NSA. During that period of time, I spent a couple of years at CIA headquarters working counterterrorism. I was in the counterterrorism center during 9/11 and the attacks on the USS Cole. Then I followed that up with an 8.5 year stint at the U.S. Army War College, teaching senior officers things like cyber warfare, current strategic threat to national security, and military applications of artificial intelligence. Since I retired in 2011, and since that time I've become more involved in critical infrastructure issues. And really that's where I'm at today. I actually also am a consultant to the U.S. Army War College, working on electives for cyber warfare.
Cynthia, thank you. Your credentials are well established, so tell us about your concerns with smart meters.
Okay. Well, as you already heard, I listened to some of your previous testimony. Smart meters are essentially digital backdoors. Hackers are seeking to exploit all avenues of entry to the grid in order to disrupt, degrade, and destroy computers. Anything that's attached to the net. If you happen to be around the Johns Hopkins area, if you go to the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, there is an Internet of Things laboratory there. And those young men can show you exactly how easy it is to hack into the system. They've shown us how easy it is to exploit the components once a hacker is in. You can tell when people are home or in their offices, when the building is occupied, when it's not, who is there, why, and where they are in the house or in the building. And sometimes the hacker can tell what people are up to in the building. Anyone who's worked on terrorism or anti-terrorism issues can immediately see the implications of that particular issue. If you imagine that any sort of ubiquitous usage of Internet of Things technology and smart grid technology can really, with a coordinated effort against a country's leadership, can provide access to leaders and their families to the extent where, unfortunately, representatives of nation states or terrorists could use nations for targeted assassinations or kidnapping. Second, in a previous testimony, I noticed Fire Chief Roddy was speaking about his own experience of a fire caused at his home by a smart meter. A newly installed one at that. He expressed concern that there were no surge protections on these smart meters in general. This is neat. And it's huge in a bigger way, probably a bigger problem than even the fire chief imagined. Heavy surges occur, really much bigger than the normal surges that you would occur on a daily basis, with things like a high altitude nuclear explosion, which again would be an attack, an intentional attack against our nation. But they can also occur with great geomagnetic storm, which is caused by solar flares, or coronal mass ejections from the sun. The most famous one in 1859, the Carrington event. If you've ever heard of that, it was essentially the worst on record. If that had occurred, if that particular coronal mass ejection had occurred today, it would have taken down electric grids across the world, all over the world, and it would have resulted in a massive number of fires. Indications of a high altitude nuclear attack, which is also known as a high EMP, electromagnetic pulse, performed on buildings, have given us a great deal of data on the possibility of fires or firestorms associated with the aftermath of such an attack. The more smart meters we have installed means there will probably be more fires in the event of either one of these occurrences. And unfortunately, larger firestorms and more immediate deaths. In the Congressional Commission's report, there's an EMP Congressional Commission. They reported in 2008 that firestorms were considered a distinct possibility, especially in areas of drought, and that was with analog systems. Regardless, there would be less likelihood of being able to put the fires out in even smart meters. In the more strategic context, access to the grid can be literally fatal for the nation. The electric grid is our center of gravity. The center of gravity is the hub of all power and movement upon which everything depends. For both military and civilian sectors, it's the source of our strength. Attack on our center of gravity is intentional. It's meant to take the enemy out completely, instantaneously, and long-term if possible. Without electricity for a prolonged period, we would have no water, no food, no transportation, no social order, and ultimately of deaths. The Congressional Commission estimated that within a year, and that the National Research Council estimated a 4 to 10 year recovery time after such an occurrence of either a solar flare or a great geomagnetic storm or the electromagnetic pulse issue.
Cynthia, let me, if you will, allow me to conclude your testimony because we have a lot of other people who want to testify. However, do any members of the committee have questions from this obviously expert witness? Representative Griffin.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you for your testimony today. I do have a question. It's something that you addressed early on in your testimony, and I just needed a little more information on this. You mentioned, and you can correct me if I'm a little inaccurate, but I'm trying to remember what you said here. You said smart meters are backdoor cyber points of entry. Could you please explain to the committee more about that?
Virtually anything can be hacked. I did hear testimony from one of your, from someone, I forget exactly who the man was, who said that there was really no way of getting any information other than billing information. A lot has to do with the way they've optimized the systems, but anything can be hacked, anything can be used for entry. I haven't been technical in many, many years, so I can't exactly tell you how personally to get into the systems, but I've seen these young men at Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab do it, and they do it very easily.
Thank you, and with permission, I would like to just do one quick follow-up.
Sure.
So if you said anything can be hacked, then is it also true that cell phones, laptops, anything else of similar technology can also be a backdoor entry for cyber trouble?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Cynthia, can analog meters be hacked?
No, not to my knowledge.
Representative Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony. To follow up on that last question about the laptops and cell phones and things of that sort, if those were hacked, they would not pose a threat to the entire power grid, though, correct?
It depends on what they're hooked up to. Usually the things that pose the most threat to the power grid would be the control systems, the SCADA systems that are hooked up to them.
Right, but an individual's personal cell phone or personal laptop or smart TV that they're enjoying in their home is not going to pose a threat to the grid if it's hacked by an individual with intent to do that.
It depends on what it's hooked up to. In this case, if you have an Internet of Things and your TV is hooked up to the network and the smart meter provides access to the grid, then yes, it could actually provide it.
But it would be through the smart meter that would be the vehicle still, correct? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Griffin.
Hi, thank you. One more follow-up question for you, please. I am familiar with the EMP pulse technology and that type of stuff. Is it true then, maybe you can educate the committee or explain a little bit more about, in the event of an EMP pulse attack, all electrical systems would be affected, and I do understand that if we're talking about a large electrical grid, sure. Is it a dangerous world? Are we all living under that threat? Yes. But could you also just explain a little bit more about what all types of technology would be affected? And I understand that a smart meter is a piece of technology, but I think that the scope here is important because, for the purposes of today, we're talking about, one piece of technology, but in the case of an EMP attack, it's a much bigger problem. Thank you.
It is indeed. Actually, it depends on the design of the weapon. What we're worried about the most at the moment is the fact that the Russians have allowed a more advanced design than we knew of before, called it's actually a neutron bomb exploded in space. It's a kiloton-sized weapon that can put out much more in the way of damaging gamma rays, and it's take the damage all the way to your pacemaker, from what I understand. It's a megaton size, a regular nuclear weapon, as I understand it, would do a great deal of damage. It could take out cars, it could take out main computers, larger things. Might not take out your phone and your laptop. Something that small would be a bit much for a regular size nuclear weapon. But I don't think I think it's more likely at this point that an advanced weapon would be used, mainly because that is what we believe the North Koreans have been testing.
Cynthia, let me, if I may, cut you off there. We do, in fact, intend to have a hearing at some point later this year on the overall threat to the grid and what we can do at the state level to secure it, and we certainly want to have you back. Any other members of the committee have questions about smart meters in particular? Vice Chair Houck.
Yeah, thanks for your testimony. As far as the smart meters having surge protectors in them, I know that there's no surge protector that will stop lightning. I mean, that'll pretty much blow everything out. Now, these attacks, do we know what they will be, and do we have surge protectors in place now that will stop them, or are they going to be so powerful that no surge protectors will be able to stop those also?
There are surge protectors of sorts. I don't think they're quite called surge protectors. It depends on what we're talking about. There is a technology that can handle it. Unfortunately, they are not deployed, and they're certainly not deployed with smart meters yet.
Any other questions? Cynthia, thank you for taking the time to be with us this morning. We'll be calling you back regarding the broader threat to the electrical grid, so thank you very much. And